Leafs,
NHL,
rumors,
prospects,
banter,
and everything in between.
This is the Shanaclan Podcast
with Hobbs
and
Lugsy.
Welcome back to another edition of the Shanaclan Podcast. I'm Lugsy here with Hobson. Now, spring is in the air. We are in the most entertaining part of the year, IMO. I think this is the best time to get into sports. You've got hockey, baseball, basketball, March Madness, and then the playoffs are just around the corner for the NHL. What more could you ask for? The football thing for me, I'm not really much into football, but this right now is like the peak of my fandom. Hobson, What about you?
No, I agree. I think it's either this time of year or I guess you could say, under normal circumstances when the NHL starts in October. I also really like the end of September, start of October kind of time when you're just on the cusp of the baseball playoffs, but the NHL season's starting and you've also got basketball and football starting. I think that's the only other time of year that really contends with where we are now. But as a fan of a team, a hockey team whose hockey team is more likely to make the playoffs than his baseball team, this is I think this is more exciting for me just because of that. The Jays honestly could be a dark horse for the playoffs this year, but they haven't in the past few years. So that's the thing with the Blue Jays though. Right now they've got a little bit of injury issues. Kirby Yates just got injured. Oh my God, man.
So
if you want it,
let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. So if any Jays fans listening into this pod right now, if you want your day ruined, and I guess by the time this is uploaded, it's already been a couple days since this thread happened. But if you're willing to just upset yourself for whatever reason, head on over to Scott Mitchell's Twitter feed and just read his little thread of tweets. So it started off with Kirby Yates. He's going to be missing the entire 2021 season because he's going for Tommy John surgery, which sucks because I'm pretty sure that's the second Tommy John surgery he's had in his career, and that means the Jays lose their closer this year. Now, apparently, with Kirby Yates, with that signing, the Jays knew that there were some issues medically with him. Apparently, he failed a couple of physicals, and that's why he was also entertaining an offer from the Atlanta Braves, and that fell through. So the Jays brass did know about the potential of Kirby Yates, his injury coming to catch up to him. But the fans didn't. So they knew it was a high risk, high reward play. So I'm hoping they have a backup plan for that. I'd like to see them go after another closer now that Yates is out all year. The Jays have some competent relievers, but I know Shane Green, who pitched last year for the Braves and for the Tigers, is available. He's a good closer. I know David Robertson's out there too. He pitched for the Yankees, I think, last year. Pitched for the Flyers in years past. The Phillies in years past. Yeah, yikes.
different Philadelphia.
Wrong sports. Yeah, wrong sport. Yeah, so we found out about that. And then immediately following that, Mitchell tweeted that George Springer might miss opening day because of an oblique strain. So that's great. And then he tweeted that Robbie Ray was going to maybe also not be ready for opening day after he fell down the stairs carrying his kid and bruised his elbow.
All right.
So that actually, I don't think that one's as severe as the other ones. I think they said he'd likely only miss one spring training start, but could be ready by the time his first start of the regular season comes into play.
Yeah.
So it was those three yesterday. And then today, Kevin Biggio was set to miss a couple games as well because he has a bruised pinky. I think he took a pitch off the pinky and there's discomfort there. So yeah, lots of injuries in Blue Jays land right now.
Well, that's the thing with baseball, though. There's always going to be injuries, and who regularly is able to play a full 160 games year in and year out, right? I can't name a single player that's been able to do that consistently, right?
I think Mike Trout's been pretty good at it. I'm gonna look this up to verify.
He's probably like an alien, though, right? He's like the one guy that's able to do it.
I'm going to look this up and make sure that I'm not completely talking out of my ass.
Because with baseball though, I think GMs have when you're comparing each sport to each other, baseball, basketball, and football are all on easy mode. You've got so much money, so many roster spots. Well, basketball's got limited roster spots, but football, you've got 60 guys in your system. Baseball, You've got 100. It doesn't even matter. Basketball, yeah, obviously you've got like 20 guys, but you still have a lot of money to work with, right? But like with hockey,
allude to the point we were making before. Sorry, go ahead, finish.
Well, I was just gonna say, like with hockey, you've got the hard salary cap, and then you've got your system. But like it's much more difficult. Like baseball, you can trade for guys so easily, right? Like with Kirby Yates going down, if I'm Shatkins, I'm trading for someone tomorrow. Like you got
or even signing someone in free agency, right?
Shit, man,
like
just
break
like the bank.
those two guys that I listed, Green and Robertson, are both they're both respected relievers in the league. I think they could both at the very least be another arm. You can never have too many arms.
Shit, and, man, and also, it's baseball. Break the bank, get both.
What I was gonna say before, to allude to the point we were making about guys who have played 162 games. Trout had a pretty good track record. He averaged, it looked like, about between 130 and 140 games a year. But the guy that I was thinking of is Joey Votto. Joey Votto's a fucking Iron Man.
Yeah.
He's played a full 162 games twice, once in 2013 and once in 2017. And just taking a look at some of his other seasons, he played 150 games in 2010, 161 in 2011. 158 in both 2015 and 2016. He played 54 last year, which is solid considering it was only a 60-game season. So yeah, hopefully the Jays can get these injuries figured out because you don't want to have the injury bug biting you heading into this season, especially the Jays have made some big splashes in free agency, and I know Yates was one of their bigger ones, so it sucks to see him miss the entire season, but I think their bullpen's capable.
Yeah. Well, like the offense is going to be fine. It's the pitching, right? That's always been
in the entire league.
Like it's always been the pitching for the past couple of years. Like how are they going to be able to hold up for it? I just wanted to mention, just for a quick sec, for the people watching this podcast, I had the Zoom meeting recording on speaker, so it's not in that gallery. So if the editing is a little choppy in the first few minutes, that's kind of my fault. You gotta love Zoom meetings.
Unfucking believable, Mark.
Yeah, geez, fire the.
God forbid you make a goddamn mistake. Unreal.
Well, the audio will be fine, but I also shift gears a little bit because I'm also in a March Madness bracket. Holy shit! This year's March Madness has been friggin' crazy.
I want to go on the record and say that I have never paid attention to March Madness in years past, but this year I've been a little more inclined to at least keep an eye on it, because it seems like every single day I get a notification about some sort of upset happening. Like, how many upsets have there been so far in the bracket? I know Loyola Chicago took down who was it they played, the 8th or 9th seed?
Illinois.
It was yes, it was Illinois. You're right. Then we had the 12th seed Oregon State taking down 5th seed Tennessee. The 11th seed Syracuse taking down 6th seed San Diego State. There was a really big one. There's a in the East Division or whatever you want to call it.
15 seed taking down a 2 seed.
Which one was that?
Crap. I gotta
Oral Roberts taking out Ohio State. That's what it was.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking at the one matchup in the East right now. UCLA 11th seed taking out 6th seed BYU, and then 14th seed Abel Christian taking out 3rd seed Texas. Like,
yeah,
I'm not a big basketball fan, even less so when it comes to college basketball. But man, like, it's pretty cool when you see all these upsets happening. Like,
it's nuts, man. That's the beauty of sport. That is that's why we play the games, right?
So who did you have winning March Madness?
I had Illinois.
Okay.
I don't know. Like with March Madness, it's literally a friggin' crapshoot. You never know who's going to win.
I'm pretty sure I had Michigan taking it all, and Michigan is still alive. I think they're going up against 4th seed Florida State in the I don't know, what would you call that the semifinals, or like what? The third matchup of the bracket for the East.
Yeah, I guess the semifinals. Yeah,
I guess you could call that the semifinals. Yeah, because then you'd have the East finals, and it'll be one of UCLA or Alabama.
Right.
And then whichever team wins of those four goes on to the official March Madness tournament. So yeah. Do you like how I just explained to our 6 listeners how a fucking bracket works?
Yeah. Yeah, no one understands how a bracket works. I myself, I don't.
So if you headed into this podcast not knowing what a bracket was, you're welcome. That's all I'm going to say.
We're the brain trust for you guys.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're in good hands. So shifting gears though, let's talk about the Leafs because some time has passed and some controversy has arisen.
It has.
Some injuries have happened. Some players have debuted for the Leafs, and I want to get your thoughts on Galchenyuk. What do you think of him, man?
Okay, so I've been honking this horn on Galchenyuk for a long, long time. Ever since they traded for him, basically. I had that tweet when Galchenyuk was traded to Carolina for when he was a Hurricane for like 6 minutes before he was traded to Toronto. And I was making fun of the whole thing. I was like, bro, he's good. I swear. I know this is only his 17th team, but he's good, bro. Trust me. He's going to figure it out. And then the Leafs traded for Galchenyuk. And I kind of laughed at it at the start because I figured the Leafs were going to take an approach with it where at the time, Jimmy Vesey was struggling big time on the fourth line. So I was kind of thinking the Leafs were just going to take Galchenyuk, throw him in on the fourth line next to like Travis Boyd and Jason Spezza or something like that, and just see how he did. And if he didn't light the lamp or do anything to warrant moving him up in the lineup, then I just figured they'd flip him again.
Right.
However, proud to say I was wrong. The Leafs have actually been really, really grooming Galchenyuk ever since they traded for him. And he's responded well to it. I mean, we've seen Sheldon Keefe made a point to mention that not a lot of guys would necessarily respond well to an AHL stint, especially someone like Galchenyuk, where he was a third overall pick in 2012. And when you're a third overall pick, you don't think you're ever going to spend any time in the minors. You think that you're going to make the NHL right out of junior and just go for it. But
yeah,
he said Galchenyuk responded well to it. He made good friends with a lot of people on the team, on the Marlies, that is. And 8 points in 6 games down there. So that's promising. And then they brought him up for this past series against Calgary. And he's got 1 assist through those 2 games. And to me, that's promising. And as a fan that sat back and watched those games, Galchenyuk looked very comfortable in playing next to Tavares and Nylander. So, there's a tweet that I want to bring up right here because I know that we're going to get into some trade deadline talk and potential trade rumors, just shit like that eventually. So I want to bring up a tweet here from Michael Mazzei, also known as @TheLeafsIMO on Twitter.
Would it be would it be Mazzei or Matzei?
I just said Mazzei. I'm not entirely sure how it's pronounced. I probably should ask him next time before I plug his tweets.
That's okay.
But either way,
I know who you're talking about.
You wouldn't know him on Twitter as Michael Mazzei or whatever it is. You'd know him as @TheLeafsIMO. So a pretty popular figure on Leafs Twitter. And he says, now that I think of it, I wonder if the Leafs not making a trade just yet is due to the emergence of Alex Galchenyuk, which is interesting because if you recall a couple weeks ago, Elliot Friedman said that this break that the Leafs were going on, where they had 5 days off between their games against Ottawa, and their games against Calgary. And then another 5 days off between that last game against Calgary and then Ottawa. If you recall, Elliot Friedman said that the fact that the Leafs only have those 4 games in the next 2 weeks could be telling in the sense that maybe Dubas will use that break to make a trade because whoever they trade out, they'll only have to worry about missing them off the roster for 4 games or whatever it is while the quarantine happens, right? And Dubas didn't make any trades. Now, it's not like the trade deadline's today, and he hasn't made any trades to improve the team. So Dubas still has a month if he wants to make a trade. And that tweet from Michael kind of makes sense because, like I said, the Leafs, I originally thought were just going to give Galchenyuk a couple games on the fourth line, try him out, flip him again. But they're not doing that. They actually see that he's got potential. They recognize that he was a former third overall pick. And while he has been on a number of teams in the past couple of years, there is potential there. And he has the ability. He still has the tools. It's just a matter of whether or not he can put them together again in Toronto. And I think the fact that they're using him in the AHL and they're giving him these one-on-one drills in practice and they're putting him in a position where he can succeed, like next to Tavares and Nylander, I think that shows the Leafs are at least willing to see if Galchenyuk can somehow channel one of his previous versions heading into the next couple months down the stretch to the playoffs. And the reason I think that is because if the Leafs do squeeze out what they can from Galchenyuk, and he does actually produce on that second line. Why would you want to give up assets to fill a role like that? Now, I'd have different thoughts on this if the trade deadline was today. I'd be a little concerned. It's like, okay, Dubas, so we've seen 2 games out of Galchenyuk, and now you're confident enough not to make a trade. But the fact that the deadline's still a month away, as much as it probably wouldn't be ideal to make a trade right at the deadline because their schedule is going to pick up and they're going to have trades to make, I honest to God think that the Leafs might be interested in seeing if Galchenyuk can be that trade piece that they're looking for. So I don't know that for a fact, but if Galchenyuk does produce, then what's the need to trade for another top 6 winger, right?
Yeah, and at the price of Igor Korshkov and freaking what was the other defenseman?
David Warsofsky.
Yeah, Warsofsky.
He was part of the return for Kasperi Kapanen in that trade.
Right. Yeah.
It was Warsofsky, Hollander, and the first round pick. You like how I led off with Warsofsky there as if he was the centerpiece of the trade?
He kind of was.
Boys, the Leafs just traded Kapanen for Warsofsky. Oh, and there's the first round pick and a B-level prospect in there too.
Only Leafs Nation would make that a big deal.
Yeah. So since I just talked my fucking head off there, Mark, what do you think of Galchenyuk and what they've gotten him?
Look, I'm gonna be straight up. I wasn't able to watch either of those games, but
good for you for admitting that.
Like the method of madness I have with the Leafs is like I can't let myself get like too emotionally invested into them. Like I've put my whole entire life into them, and it's like I'm gonna support you guys from afar, but like with as much love as possible. But like when I watch them, like too much of my like well-being goes into those games, and it's just it's so destructive.
Wait, hold on. So you weren't busy on Friday and Saturday. You just decided to watch the games.
No, I was.
Okay.
I was busy.
Mark, I was about to fucking unload on you right there.
When I'm not busy, I will watch the Leafs. Of course.
There you go.
Don't be silly.
That's all I needed to hear.
But I like when I'm hanging out with my girlfriend or with friends, I'm not going out of my way to watch the Leafs.
I was gonna say that if you just decided not to watch the Leafs because you didn't want to get angry, I was gonna be like, Mark, for fuck's sakes, we all do it, so you have to do it too, okay? But no, if you were actually busy, that's fine. I won't flame you for that. But overall, like, take it from me. I'm saying this without any bias because there really wasn't much to say. He had a secondary assist on the Tavares and Nylander goal, but he put up a point. And one thing that I also will point out, since you didn't watch either of the games, is that on Friday night, I think it was, Chris Cuthbert said on the broadcast that Galchenyuk looked really good in the one aspect of his game that he could control, which was his effort, which was really promising to hear. He went into with, like, we've talked before about how you want a guy on that second line who's willing to go into the corners and do the dirty work for Tavares and Nylander. Galchenyuk obviously shouldn't be expected to be that guy, but from what I saw on Friday and Saturday's games, he was going into the corners and throwing hits. Like, good. And I don't know if that's what the Leafs are asking him to do, or if he just really doesn't want to fuck up this chance that he has with the Leafs. But either way, assuming the Leafs get at least at the bare minimum middle 6 type production from Galchenyuk next to Tavares and Nylander, what do you think that says about the possibility of trading for someone, like trading for a forward, I should say?
Look, man, Toronto's top 5 in the league in goal scoring. So like trading for another forward for me, it's kind of redundant. Like I've been on my soapbox about the issue with Mikael Granlund or Marcus Granlund.
Mikael.
Mike,
I think it's just Michael Granlund.
Michael Granlund, Granlund, whatever it is.
Yeah,
Granlund.
Spelled like Mikael, but it's Michael, I think.
Yeah, he's Finnish.
Yeah,
I don't know
names.
And plus, like if you're gonna trade for a forward, you better understand that like he fits the team dynamic in terms of like actual need right now. We're fine with goals. Austin, John, Mitch, Nylander, Jumbo, Spezza, Wayne, like we don't need goals. We really don't need goals. We need to defend those goals.
Healthy mix of first names and last names used as you listed those players off.
That's okay. People know who I'm talking
Austin,
about.
Mitch, John, Simmons. No, I'm joking. I think you said Wayne actually anyways, but anyways.
But like what I'm saying though is like Toronto's top 10 for the first time in like my Leaf fandom of goals against,
Yeah.
And like in years past, it's been like, holy shit, okay, we're top 5 in goals scoring, but goals allowed were also top 5. But
Right.
like bottom 5, I should say. Bottom
Yeah.
5, right? So it just totally negates itself, right? So like we've got Brody now, we've got Muzzin and Hall doing well for us. Bogosian's doing well.
Mm-hmm.
But like what happens if Muzzin goes down? What happens if Brody goes down? We're fucked.
Yeah, I would entertain the idea of trading for another defenseman, just
another top 4 guy, and I'm okay
for that very specific outcome.
Like it doesn't need to be a top pairing guy. It really doesn't. Just get at least a number 5. At the very least, get another 5. Yeah. That's all I want. That's all I need. Just get more insurance if Muzzin goes down or Brody goes down, because those guys play that kind of style where any block shot is a broken foot, broken hand.
Well, I mean, we full on saw Jake Muzzin miss some time with a broken face for a little bit. So my question is, if the Leafs were to make a move for a defenseman, you'd have to imagine that Travis Dermott would be on the way out. He'd have to be, because where are you gonna put him in that position? If they were to go out, say for example they trade for Matthias Ekholm, because he's a guy, he's a top 4 defenseman like you mentioned, and he would probably demand the same type of role. Not he, but the Preds would demand the same sort of type of return for him as the Kings did for Jake Muzzin, and the Leafs can offer that up. I'm sure the Leafs aren't attached to that fucking first overall pick this year. It's not an overly strong
this draft. Sucks.
Yeah,
it sucks,
so,
man.
You'd have to imagine they'd move on. They trade a guy like him. They've got the surplus of sort of B-level prospects like Carl Grundstrom and Sean Durzi that they could offer up. So if the Leafs do trade for Ekholm, on the left side,
they did offer up. You mean that they did offer up?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or that they could, like, that's what I'm saying. It's like, they've got guys that you could compare to Sean Durzi and Carl Grundstrom that you could include in a package for Ekholm. Right. Now, so that's why I'm asking this though. If you were to trade for Ekholm, that means you've got Riley, Muzzin, Ekholm on the left side, and then you've got Brody, Hall, Bogosian on the right side. Like, I don't see where Travis Dermott fits. Like, you could use him as a 7th defenseman, I guess, but I'm not sure how well that would bode with him since he's been a top 6 guy all year, right?
Look, man, good Stanley Cup winning teams have too many good players.
They do.
Right?
They do. You're right.
So for Travis Dermott to understand his place on the team, he needs to understand that in order to win a cup, you might be bumped down the lineup.
See, and that's
accept that.
That makes sense too. And I'm sure if the brass came to him and said, "Hey, listen, so we're thinking we're going to use you in a bit of a more limited role down the stretch." I mean, fuck, he doesn't have much of defense anyways. I'm pretty sure he's got 1 point this year, 2 points maybe. So yeah, 2 points at this point. So he can't really make the argument to say, yes, I deserve to be in the lineup if the Leafs were to trade for a guy like Ekholm. He doesn't deserve to be in there over Ekholm. Having said that, he's still only 23 years old, and other teams might see that as upside. So I don't see why. That's why I'm saying I think the Leafs, if they're going to trade for a defenseman, Dermott would go back the other way, because on a team that would sell a guy like Ekholm, Nashville could use a guy like Dermott on the left side to maybe use him in a bit of a I won't say more of a shelter or more of an increased role, but he's a guy, like, he's an NHL player and he'd fit in on other teams as well. And I feel like if they're going to lose a guy like Ekholm, why not ask for a guy like Travis Dermott in return, who's shown that he's got a decent defensive game. He's got offensive potential, and he's only 23 years old, and he comes in a super cheap contract. I think he's only making like one point something this year, 1.9 maybe.
Peanuts. But in a pandemic though, that's too much apparently.
Right. Yeah.
So
very true.
But I before we leave this topic in the dust, I wanted to ask you like how the Leafs looked against Calgary though.
They looked, I would say they looked good. Honestly, Friday night, if you look at the stats from that game, the Leafs outshot the Flames. Freddie lost in the game. And I really, really, really hate to flame Freddie for anything. And I've said this a million times and I'll say it again. There have been so many occasions in years past where the Leafs have played like absolute dog shit and Freddie's come in and bailed them out. So, regardless of what your feelings are for Freddie Anderson, take in that we could still be watching a team with Jonas Gustafsson or James Reimer or Jonathan Bernier.
That's the top
That
scorer.
never-ending fucking carousel of goalies that swapped in and out of between the pipes and didn't live up to expectations. We try someone new. Freddie Anderson gave the Leafs a consistent starting goalie for the first time in my lifetime anyways. Or maybe not my lifetime, but in the time I've been a fan. So I hate ripping on him. That's my point. But there comes a point where you could say, oh yeah, he should have, he could have had that one, but it was deflected, or that was just a bad play by the defense. I don't care, man. They were at a point where the Calgary was up 4-3 and they had 14 shots on net. If you're you need to give your team a chance to win. You could make the argument that Freddie maybe didn't have the best chance on all the goals he allowed. But if you're on a team like Toronto, you got to give your team a chance to win, especially when they're actually playing well. The Leafs were scoring goals that night. Like, their defensive breakdowns weren't the issue. It's not like they had a span of 1 minute like they did against Vancouver where they allowed 2 goals in a minute and they took their foot off the gas. They were playing a good game throughout the entire game, and they just couldn't get they couldn't get that save that they needed. And it's since been kind of announced from Freddie himself that he's been playing through something, which makes a lot more sense because Freddie also said in a tweet, he said, you don't just lose your skill set. You don't lose your abilities like that, which is true. You don't all of a sudden wake up one day and you're not the same goalie you were the day before. Having said that, in Freddie Anderson's case, if you're playing through something and Jack Campbell's producing the way that he's been, I know he had about a month between starts between January, February, and March, but Campbell's looked fucking great in his limited sample size this year. 2 shutouts and 4 starts. He's got a save percentage above .950 and a goals against average. I think it's still just barely above 1, but it's either way. Those are over a 4-game span Vezina caliber numbers, right? So with Freddie apparently now playing through something, I think I've noticed over the past couple days that he has been missing practice, which leads me to believe that the Leafs might be using him on the LTIR in the coming days.
I'm not sure about that, man.
You don't think so?
Yeah, I don't know.
Ian Scott's on the taxi squad now. They've got Michael Hutchinson there. Freddie Anderson has not been taking part in any sort of activities. He didn't even back Campbell up on Saturday night.
Okay. So bear with me here, okay? Bear with me. Hold on to your butt, okay? Like buckle in.
I don't have a buckle on this chair. I'm sorry.
Fred's injured. That much is clear, okay? And do you think
at the very least he's bugging some?
Well, yeah. Do you think management hasn't put him on LTIR because they want to trade him?
So here's the problem that I've got with that. It's a legitimate question to ask.
Is there a controversy? Friedman said no. But Fred is a UFA. He's 31. Hasn't looked so great the past 2 years now, okay? This is an overall body of work now. It's not just 1 week. It's not just a month now. It's over 2 years of Fred falling now.
Yeah.
Got Jack in net, and Jack's been great. But Jack has no track record of being able to start games consistently for a full year. His only body of work was been 30 games max with LA, who's been a shit team, and he was able to pull them out of some shit, right?
Yeah.
Is there a controversy or is there not?
Well, so the problem I have is that all the points that you make right there about why the Leafs might be trying to trade Fred also kind of support the notion that no one else would want to take him. Because here's the thing. What team is going to want to take on a goalie who's making $5 million a year? And yes, he is a UFA, so sure, they could take him back as just a returning piece and get rid of him after this year. But I don't see any teams that are in that position where they'd want to take him on, especially if they know that he's battling something. Making $5 million a year, his save percentage is below 900, his goals against average well above 3. So I just don't understand what team would want to take that on. There's nothing appealing about that. And unless and the thing is we're still talking about Freddie Anderson here. it's not like he's in year 4 of an 8-year contract and he's been shit for the past. Like he has been. He signs
an 8-year contract worth $10 million per year.
Exactly, like the Bobrovsky treatment. Exactly, but that's my question. Is like Freddie Anderson. Sure, he hasn't been good this year, and he wasn't good last year, but he's still Freddie Anderson, and he was still the starting goalie on a Leafs team that was near the top of the Atlantic every year. So it's not like we've got. I'm trying to think of a good comparison. It's not like you've got, say, a guy like fucking Carter Hutton signed to $5 million for 4 more years. Like it's Freddie Anderson, and I don't think he's in really. Yeah, I don't think he's really in a position where teams will look at him like a boat anchor. Like there's still something to be had there, but
he's a starting goalie. He's just not on the upper echelon anymore.
Exactly.
Like
and it's just,
middle
I don't know. It's just confusing to me. I know that we heard Steve Dangle podcast. Those guys talked about it a couple weeks ago. Goaltending technically is the number 1 glare right now for the Leafs, but what are they going to get if they trade Freddie? Like, what are they going to get? Like, who would take that? That's all I'm asking. And you'd have to be getting a goalie back too. Like you just said right there, Jack Campbell doesn't have the track record to start games consistently throughout an entire season. So do we really feel comfortable going into the playoffs to Jack Campbell and Michael Hutchison?
No.
You'd want, if you're going to trade Fred,
No.
you would want another goalie in return. And I don't know what team would be able to not only take Freddie, but give the Leafs a goalie too. Like what, again, are you going to trade him to fucking Buffalo and get Carter Hutton back? Campbell and Hutton going into the playoffs or what? Like... I don't know. That's the only problem I have. Like, I understand why the Leafs might be entertaining offers on him, or not entertaining offers on him, but entertaining and leveling out the market. But I just don't I don't know who would take him. That's all I'm saying.
Hear me out on this one.
Okay.
Spitballing. I've seen some rumors. I've seen the trade winds whirling in a freaking vortex, a whirlwind.
I feel like I know where you're going with this. Yes, that's exactly where you're going with this. Now, here's my question.
Yay or nay? Do we go after it? Does management do that? Do they pull the trigger?
No, they don't do that. Jonathan Quick is he's got the same stats as Freddie this year, albeit on a worse team, and he's making more than Freddie. Also only by 25K or something like that.
And you make it work.
But why? I just don't see the point for that. Like why are we downgrading on purpose and paying a guy the same amount as Freddie to bring him in?
Look, man, it's not about the now. It's what Jonathan Quick has done in the past. Okay, that's how every GM works. Hobson.
Yeah, I know. But the thing is that we just finished talking about how Freddie isn't the guy that he was a couple years ago. Jonathan Quick hasn't been Jonathan Quick since fucking 2016 or something like that. 2015, 2014. Yeah, they were on the fucking cup run. I saw Jonathan Quick's name pop up, and my first thought was just why. Like, why would if the Leafs are going to get anyone, if the Leafs are going to get Jonathan Quick, mark my words, it's only because it's going to be a throw-in with retained salary in the package for Alex Iafallo. I'm on that fucking train again. But I don't think the Leafs would be pursuing Jonathan Quick via trade when goaltending's an issue for them right now. Quick's a little bit older. He's a little bit washed up, also injury prone, and he's making more than Freddie. And I can't remember if he has term on it. Is he a UFA at the end of the year?
Quick has 1 more year after this season.
Right. So imagine the Leafs pull the trigger on that deal and Quick doesn't improve his game. And now they've got it, and ultimately just a more expensive, worse version of Freddie and an older version.
Hobson, what I'm going to be devil's advocate for is Quick's ability to steal games in the playoffs. We've always been yelling, screaming for a goalie to have an ability to steal games in the playoffs. Fred can't do it. He'll steal you 1 or 2. He can't steal you the third one.
Right. You know, Mark, I respect you playing,
to be able to do that, man.
I respect you playing devil's advocate here. I will also remind you that the last time Jonathan Quick stole a game in the playoffs was 7 years ago. I don't think the Kings have made the playoffs since, have they? Or maybe they've made the playoffs since.
They made the playoffs like 3 years ago.
Right.
They got swept by Vegas, though.
Right. So there you go. When was the last time Jonathan Quick stole a game for the Kings in the playoffs? He was a much younger version of himself. Well, no, not even 4 years ago. You said they got swept.
No, I'm saying they got swept 3 years ago.
Oh, okay.
4 years ago.
Either way, we're talking about 4 years ago. Like,
yeah, we're just like moving the goalpost.
Yeah.
5 years ago, he was good. He was good.
Exactly.
He's gonna be good now. Watch. He's 36. He's good now. No.
Rick DiPietro went first overall once. We should bring him out of retirement. Mark's looking off into space right now. If you're not watching, he's looking off into space.
I didn't hear that.
The wake of PTSD from Rick DiPietro's name being mentioned.
Glassjaw Ricky.
But yeah, I guess I know we kind of went on a little bit of a tangent there. But to allude to your original question that was posed about 15 minutes ago or so, I think the Leafs played well against Calgary. I don't think, truth be told, I think a lot of the reason that they went on that stretch where they were 1-6 in their past 7 games has to do with goaltending. I went back and looked at those games. The Leafs outshot their opponents in 6 of those 7 games, and they scored at least 3 goals in 4 of them. Like, that's like, you could be better, sure, but like, those aren't stats, and those aren't games where you can look at the Leafs and say you needed to do better. Like, that's the way that I see it. And they did have their flaws. They had a couple games, and honestly, if you're 1-6-0 in your past 7, you can't blame it all on the goalie. I'm just saying that Freddie was probably the main contributor as to why they didn't do well over that stretch.
Look, man, I really don't like the argument of, they outshot their opponent. Okay, but how were they in the defensive zone?
Right. You don't
how'd they cover their men? How'd they block shots? How'd they hit in the corners?
And that's why I'm not using that as my primary argument. But when you see that they outshot their opponents 6 out of the 7 games they played, and they lost 5 of those games where they outshot their opponents, it's the same thing as plus minus, man. Like, there's certain things you don't want to put too much stock into when you're judging a player or when you're judging a team's play, but you can't ignore it at the same time, right? So I don't know. I think the Leafs overall, they didn't look great especially over those games against Winnipeg and then Ottawa and Vancouver as well. They didn't look great, but they can't be fully blamed for it. Against Calgary, that first loss was 100% on goaltending. Like, I don't care what you tell me, it's 100% on goaltending. And then on Saturday night,
Kadri's fault.
Yes, exactly.
Kadri's fault.
Saturday night, I think they looked really well. I think they looked really, really good. I think when Jack Campbell starts, he gives the Leafs a whole other level of confidence. And I'm not saying that as a knock on Freddie, but I think just having Campbell's aura there and how happy he is and how great of a guy he is and how hard he's had it this season, when he has a fucking good start and then all of a sudden he trips and he hurts himself again, he's out for another month. Like, he's battled some adversity this year, and I think he inspires the team in front of him when he comes in and he plays like that. So I'm kind of hoping that maybe we've got a Matt Murray or an Andrew Hammond situation with Jack Campbell here, and he goes on a bit of a run. I'm not putting any hope into that or any stock, but I'm hoping. I just contradicted myself. I'm not putting any stock into that. I don't think it'll happen, but a man can hope.
Geez, man, it would sure as hell be great for Jack's career as well, because he got drafted 11th overall by the Stars.
Yeah.
So, like, for him to finally show that he's capable of taking the reins for a team, that would be not only huge for his career, but huge for the Leafs as well.
Well, and that's just it. Like, Jack Campbell, like, if he was just a regular run-of-the-mill backup and he's never been more than a journeyman who hops from team to team every year on one-year deals and fills in the backup role, I don't think I'd be as high on him. But the fact that he was drafted 11th overall once upon a time shows that he's got the skills. It's the same thing as when we talk about Galchenyuk. Like, you don't get drafted that high for no reason.
Right.
And he obviously didn't get off to the start that he wanted to his career in Dallas. He was injured quite a bit.
You're talking Jack.
Yeah, talking about Jack Campbell. Yeah. So, I mean, the whole thing with him is he didn't get off to the start that he wanted to in Dallas, I'd imagine. He was injured quite a bit, didn't really produce in the AHL for them. And I think he only started 1 game for the Stars ever, and it didn't go well. So he obviously doesn't have much to show from his time in Dallas. But then when he got traded to LA, he kind of started to find his game a little bit. First in the AHL, and then he became a bona fide backup to Jonathan Quick. But if you're in LA and you've got Jonathan Quick, who at the time was sort of on the downswing from his prime, but he's still making $5.25 million a year, and he's still your starting goalie on paper, he's kind of stuck behind Jonathan Quick there. So I think now that he's in Toronto and Freddie's battling whatever, this is his time to shine. And I truly think that if he can stay healthy, I think we're going to see at least close to the version of the 11th overall Jack Campbell that we might be able to.
Yeah, well, and like you said though, like looking at Jack Campbell's numbers, especially for the Kings, is effing crazy.
It's pretty impressive. Like
the Kings were bad.
They were. They
bad.
have been for a few years.
Starting to take over. Like 31 games, 26 games. He managed both years that he like actually got considerable playing time to keep the GAA below 3 for an LA Kings team that's been a lottery team for the past like 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I think his goals against average in 2018-19, I think it was. That was when he played a full season for them.
Yeah.
He had, I think his goals against average was like 245 or something like that. Like, it was 285, I remember, this past year, like before he was traded to Toronto. But I don't know, man. Like between what we saw from Campbell last year before COVID happened and what we've seen from him this year since they kind of started giving him some starts here and there when he's been healthy, I really like what I see in him. And it's not just like you can look at the shutout and you can look at the stats all you want and say, oh yeah, that's a good goalie. But watching the games too, he looks so comfortable in the net.
He's controlled.
He's very, very controlled and comfortable, which I love because I think that's a super underrated aspect for a goalie to have. Like, sure, you can flop all over the place and still be a fan favorite. James Reimer. But like if you're calm in the net and you don't let adversity get to your head, you can be a great goalie in the league. So
you need a short memory, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can't let yourself get all overwhelmed on goals that just happen, because if you do, it's just going to fuck you up. I say this as I've never played a lick of goalie in my entire life, just on the street, let alone in the NHL. But I'd imagine that having that mentality would help you out for sure.
Yeah. So we're talking about the trade deadline and potential moves that Toronto could make, especially for goaltending. I want to look at the defense, though, just to touch back on that. Looking at Carolina's roster, they've got some forward injuries. Vincent Trocheck's out, and Teuvo Teravainen's out. He's on the IR. They need forwards regardless if those guys are back healthy. They've got some defense that they can trade away. I'm thinking Brett Pesce. What do you think about him? Do you think it's worthwhile for Dubas to try and acquire him?
You know, I think for Brett Pesce, once again, it's the same thing as Matthias Ekholm. I'd like to hear what a typical trade package for Brett Pesce would consist of. And I see that you've listed some goalies as well that they've got. So like, I don't know. I know you just kind of dropped that on me, but I want to hit you with the Uno reverse and get your take on it. Like if you were to put together a trade package for a guy like Brett Pesce, what would you be willing to give up?
Well, okay. So here's always what I try and assess for both team need. Carolina needs offense, but they also, since they are not a rebuilding team, they're more in the mindset of hockey trades and buying. So with that in mind, they're not looking for prospects and picks. They want roster players. And then Brett Pesce is a defenseman who is very, very strong defensively, and he can manage 20 plus minutes a night. So with that in mind, Carolina doesn't want to give him up because that player is who their identity is. Strong defensive ability with a mindset to help the team, right? They're very team-oriented, very strong defensively. So they don't have to trade him, but in order to try and get him, you need to give to get. So that involves a quality forward. We're talking Nylander, I think. Does Dubas want to trade Nylander for Brett Pesce? Probably not, because trading a high caliber forward for a top 4 defenseman with a strong defensive game doesn't really pan out all that well in terms of output and production, because we've seen that with Taylor Hall and Adam Larson. Yeah. Is it a smart move to make? Well, on paper, you look at Toronto and it's like, well, Justin Hall is on that second pair. If you put Brett Pesce there, or if you put Brett Pesce with Morgan Riley, that's looking pretty freaking nice, right? Yeah. But Yeah, like I think Carolina would want that first round pick. I know that I said that they're not in the business of a rebuilding package, but a first round pick along with a forward prospect and then a roster player. Like it's hard to quantify what his actual value is because like defensemen are weird, man. GMs overrate defensemen all the time, but some reason they're so effective. Like, I don't know. Good defensemen are valuable. And when you're not scoring, what do you bring to the team, right? And if you're good at defending, coaches love you. GMs love you.
So here's what I think. I think that you are very correct in saying that Toronto and Carolina kind of have each other's needs.
Yep.
Carolina needs forwards, Leafs have forwards. Toronto needs, I guess, defense and goaltending, and Carolina's got that.
Yeah.
Having said that, I think the fact that the Leafs have been much better defensively this year than any other team would turn them off from making a trade with a team like Carolina, just because you know that a package would have to start with Nylander, and I don't think Dubas would trade Nylander. Now, when you've got defensemen,
as long as he's GM, right?
Exactly. Like it was, and when you've got other defensive options on the market, like a guy like Matthias Ekholm, for example, where we already know the package that's expected is a first round pick and prospects, the Leafs can make that trade any day of the week because they don't have to downgrade their offense in order to upgrade their defense. Because here's the thing. Nylander, the Leafs are great offensively. You could argue they don't need any help, but I'm not sure if I would mess with any of their core players in a trade for a defenseman this year. Maybe if TJ Brody wasn't here and the Leafs still had a guy like Cody Ceci playing on the second pairing or something like that. In that instance, I would maybe be a little more willing to bite the bullet and trade a guy like Nylander for a defenseman. But the fact that the Leafs have already been pretty solid defensively this year, it could use an upgrade, but I'm not sure if it would be worth forking someone over like Nylander for that upgrade when they can find a guy like Pesce on another team like Nashville and Ekholm. If they really want to boost their defense, I think they'd be more inclined to make a trade with Nashville for Ekholm, just because Nashville has requirements for it that I think the Leafs would be more willing to meet than what Carolina would want. So that's pretty much my whole take on it. Like if Carolina were to do it, if they were to take a package, say that starts with, I don't know, first round pick, Alex Kerfoot and Philip Holland or something like that, I would consider making that trade. I think that'd be a good trade. But if it's going to start with William Nylander, I don't think there's a trade to be made there. I don't think the Leafs are looking to downgrade their offense, especially since there's rumors going around they're looking for a top six forward. If you get rid of Nylander, sure, your defense improves, but then all of a sudden you've got I won't say black holes, but you've got two more holes to fill on forward. So,
right.
I don't know. That's just the way I see it. I think Toronto and Carolina could be good business partners in the offseason, but as for in a mid-season deal, I'm not sure they'd be able to make something work. I don't think the Leafs have the package that I don't think the Leafs have the Leafs do have what Carolina wants, but I don't think they're willing to part with what Carolina would want, is my point.
Yeah, I think a hockey deal is better suited for the summer.
I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
especially when you're talking about two contenders, right? Like Toronto and Carolina both have their sights set on a cup this year. Like,
yeah, you don't want to take away what makes you good.
No, exactly.
Yeah, so no, I agree on that. I just figured, you know what, like Carolina's got so many good defenders, right? And they've got three goalies that can take the reins in the crease, right? Like Mrazek and Nedeljkovic. I think that's how you say his name.
Yeah, it's Nedeljkovic.
They've got two starters, right? Because Nedeljkovic is their goalie of the future, and then Reimer is a glorified backup. He can play 30 games easily for you, right? Yeah. So I was wondering, like, is there a big blockbuster to be had during the season, or is that going to be like a summertime kind of deal? You know, like Mrazek or Nedeljkovic to Toronto, or I don't know.
I think if the Leafs, you know what, to allude to that point a little bit, I think that if Carolina was willing to offer the Leafs Pesce and Nedeljkovic, I think that's something maybe they would consider trading Nylander for it. But again, not mid-season. I feel like that would be something they would do in the offseason.
Yeah.
Also,
that makes sense.
Peter Mrazek, he's been injured all year, but he's quietly become one of the better goalies in the NHL since he got to Carolina. Yeah. And he's not a guy I don't
Defense
think
does in front of you, eh?
Oh yeah, incredible concepts.
From Detroit to Carolina, yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah, a little bit of an upgrade on the back end there, but yeah, I mean, I think if I don't think Carolina would be willing to trade either Nedeljkovic or Mrazek at this point in time. I think they'd be willing to deal Reimer, but Reimer's also been pretty reliable for them this year as well. So
yeah,
I don't know. It's tough to say. Before we stray too far away into non-Leaf related topics, I want to get your thoughts on the Canucks trying to reform their entire team as the Vancouver Maple Leafs. Last week, the Canucks have claimed both Jimmy Vesey and Travis Boyd off of waivers from the Leafs. So, Mark, what do you think?
Look, when you're in the position of Vancouver in a looming cap crunch, and you're trying to make the playoffs, you're desperate to see any bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Because like Quinn Hughes he's got a contract coming up. Brock Besser signed a friggin' bridge deal, and then Elias Pettersson's got a new contract coming up this summer. And then Thatcher Demko's an RFA. So it's kind of like, all right, so we need as much depth right now as possible to help us get into the playoffs. Just so if this season's a failure, well, if this season isn't a failure, and if this coming off season is a bit of a tough one again, we have just a little bit of light to show the fans like, hey, we made the playoffs, right? And then you look at Canadian teams, they're all sharks in this small little aquarium, right? Like you see blood, you're going to attack. And when you can get a Canadian or a player from a Canadian team without having to quarantine, you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm Jim Benning, I'm doing that 100 times out of 100. If I'm Pierre Dorian, I'm doing that 100 times out of 100. It's free money, and they don't have to quarantine. Jimmy Vesey, not a bad player, but he just got lost in the shuffle in Toronto. Travis Boyd, he got lost in the shuffle as well. He did really lost steam with the Leafs.
And you know what? It really does suck personally for me, anyways, to see Travis Boyd go like that, because he had a great story coming into Toronto. The Leafs signed him in the offseason, and I don't know if any analyst or reporter or I don't know, any GM or whoever, I don't know if anybody had Travis Boyd being a mainstay on the Leafs roster, just because they had so many guys that they got to worry about getting some looks, right? They pretty much used the month of January for tryouts. And while Boyd missed the first 6 or so games of the season, finally had an opportunity with injuries. He came in and he produced. He has 8 points in 20 games this year, and there's really not much more you can ask for out of a third or fourth liner. So it sucks, because I think down the stretch, he would have been a great player to have on the taxi squad come playoff time. Yep. But I am happy that now he's on a team where he knows he'll be able to get regular minutes, because he is a very solid player. And heading into this year, I thought he wouldn't be anything more than like a 13th forward kind of thing, like a depth piece. But when he got his shot in the lineup, he proved that he can be an effective player. So I really hope he turns it around in but I really hope he succeeds in Vancouver.
And with these, one last thing with these waiver placements with Toronto, they prove once again that cap space is an asset, because I believe Dubas is up to something, because VC and Boyd, I believe, combined for like 1.6 million cap space.
Mm-hmm.
So you could get a decent forward.
Ooh, actually, yes, 1.6 million. Right. I just did the math in my head.
Yeah.
9 and 7.
Math is fun.
Yeah, math is
so
math.
And then you could get like some prorated contracts as well, cheaper at the deadline or something. Yeah. So
there is I have a tweet here that I'd like to read out on the Boyd topic. This one comes from Spence at Magician Marner on Twitter, and this is one of the best tweets that I saw over the past couple days. He said Kyle Dubas did a better job of signing the Canucks bottom 6 forwards than Jim Benning did. I mean, it's hilarious, because Jim Benning literally poured $26 million into his bottom 6. And the Canucks just got 2 guys who, I mean, I know VC struggled this year, but they just got Travis Boyd, who I think his point per game pace is better than most of their bottom 6 forwards at this point. And he's making league minimum. I think their bottom 6 is better with VC and Boyd in it than it would have been without. And Jimmy Vesey actually he's been getting a couple of reps on their top line the other day.
Yeah,
which is kind of strange to see. I think he was playing with Horvat, I think, and Jake Virtanen. So Horvat getting the pleasure to play with a couple of reclamation projects. I don't know what their thinking was on that top line, but either way,
Virtanen's getting showcased. That's what that is. Virtanen's getting showcased. Vancouver's trade him.
Yeah. And you know what? It's unfortunate. We've talked about VC before. I'm a little more disappointed in him because I was really, like we always talk about. He said he was going to come into camp with his hair on fire. It just didn't work out. But then again, he was making $900K. Whatever. You move on from a guy like him. Travis Boyd. It also sucks just because he really didn't have anything. Well, I won't say didn't have anything going for him, but compared to some of the guys he was going to battle for a bottom six job, he came in and he made his presence known when he was here. So I truly hope for the best for those two guys in Vancouver. Right. I'd like to see them produce and finish the season strong.
Yeah, no, I don't blame Jim Benning at all for picking up those guys. And I think anyone else could have, like Edmonton, I'm sure would have picked him up. Montreal would have picked him up, right? Calgary would have picked him up. Just Vancouver got
there'd be a bunch of teams that would have, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So Mark, I know you had some choice words to say about a certain defenseman playing forward on a certain California-based hockey team.
I'm not going to delve too deep into it. I just think it's friggin' hilarious because everyone in the past 4 or 5 years have been beating the drum of Dubas better acquire this guy. And it's that's Josh Manson on the Anaheim Ducks. He's, as we all knew, he was a top 4 shutdown defenseman for the Anaheim Ducks, making $4.5 million as a cap hit per year. He's a right-handed defenseman. He's big, mean. His dad, I believe, played for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And, it's just really weird to see him taking up a spot on the 4th line left wing spot for the Anaheim Ducks. Yeah. I don't get that. I think as soon as you have to start putting an actual top 4 defenseman on forward, you should probably try and either sign a forward or trade for one.
You know, the funniest part, well, I won't say the funniest part, but the most wild part about Josh Manson is that we're talking about a guy that Leaf fans have been clamoring for a trade for over the past however long. His name came up at almost every single trade deadline, I think, since the Leafs got Matthews and Marner, those guys.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, he is just completely fallen off the map. I haven't heard his name at all since 2019 or 2018. No. And it comes for good reason. I mean, he only had 9 points in 50 games last year. He's only played 7 games this year, and he doesn't have a single point. You know what's a question I have, though? In the rare case, in the rare event that we actually do hear about a defenseman playing forward, and I'm not talking about hybrid guys like Brent Burns or Dustin Byfuglien, like guys that have played defenseman their whole career and they get a look at forward. Why is it always the defensive defenseman that they move to forward? Have you ever noticed that you never see an offensive defenseman play forward?
Brendan Smith.
The cases that I did he play forward?
He has.
Okay, so there's another name I didn't know about. I was just going to say Mark Pysyk and Mike Matheson, I think, both played forward for Florida. I know Mark Pisyk's a little more of a two-way guy, but Mike Matheson's not an offensive defenseman. Nope. I'm pretty sure he's made for a defensive role. And then now you've got Josh Manson, a guy that also hasn't really been known for offense. You never hear of, for example, the Leafs using Morgan Riley on forward, or Jake Gardiner would be a better example. I've heard people suggest moving Jake Gardiner to forward a couple times, but you never see teams do that. For whatever reason, it's always a defensive defenseman. And I don't know if it's maybe because they're using him in a limited role and they want them to play a defensive shutdown game just up front, I guess. I don't know.
Well, it's because of that size, right? That impact. Yeah, I just remember, I will always remember Zdeno Chara in 2013. Boston was on a power play, and they were like, all right, Z, go to the front of the net. No one could touch him.
Yeah. And
so you put someone who's 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" on the forecheck, they're going to cause a lot of shit. That's a big body, man. They make a big difference. And with Josh Manson's case, I find that so weird. Like Anaheim is probably on their last legs with them, and they're like, shit, we got to find a use for them. What, like,
honestly, I don't know. It also might just have to do with the fact that Anaheim's a lottery team this year, so they've just said fuck it. Like, why not experiment? I remember. Yeah. Okay, I'm not about to compare my high school or my house league hockey years to a fucking NHL team, but I do remember at the state season where we were the worst team in the league, and we had a couple games left before the playoffs, and our coach just said fuck it for one game, and he threw all of our worst defensive players, including me, on defense. And he threw all of our worst offensive players, like our worst offensive defensemen, on forward. And it was fun. I mean, I was understandably shit at my job, but one of the defensive defensemen scored. So I wonder if Anaheim's doing something like that. They just said, "Fuck it, we're not making the playoffs." Josh, if you want to try playing forward, buddy, just see what happens.
I wonder if that's like to try and boost his trade value to some teams. Like, hey, what's your price for Josh? Well, see. He's a forward, so he can play forward too. Yeah,
exactly.
And it's like, no, Josh he's Manson? Not. He's just he's a sheep in wolf's clothing. I don't buy it for a second.
Could you imagine Josh Manson just goes on a fucking heater, and he just ends up as like this two-way for this fucking Patrice Bergeron style two-way forward that can put up like 50 points, 60 points a year, and also play a really good defensive game.
Dude, well, like Florida had it with Mark Pysyk against the Leafs last year. He scored a hat trick against us, and it's like, dude, this dude hasn't scored more than 3 goals in an entire season, ever.
Fuck, man, you're right. Like, that was disappointing. You just uncovered some pretty horrible memories.
I think the Leafs lost like 8-4 that game.
They did.
They were just like, screw it, we're not trying.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right. So
switching gears now.
Another topic we could talk about here. Ooh. So Tim Peel, longtime NHL referee, was just canned because he had a hot mic during the game between, I think it was Nashville and who was it? Dallas? Were they playing?
Detroit.
No,
it was Nashville and Detroit.
Nashville and Detroit. Okay. So Tim Peel was picked up.
Peel bananas.
Yes, he was picked up with a hot mic when he pretty much admitted to calling a bullshit tripping call on Victor Arvidsson because yes, read it out, please.
There wasn't much, but I wanted to get an effing penalty against Nashville early in the.
Yeah.
There wasn't much, but I wanted to get an effing penalty against Nashville.
He more or less just
early in the game.
He more or less just wanted to call a penalty for the sake of evening it up. Now, what are your thoughts on that, Mark? Because I've got my own thoughts, but I want to hear your take first.
I think that just uncovered a whole can of worms for the NHL. And Colin Campbell is going to try and dispose of this as quickly and as efficiently as possible. But I think with Tim Peel, it really sheds a light on a lingering dark thought amongst fans across the NHL, in which is there a little bit of match fixing in the NHL? Is there a little bit of, oh, you're going to call that, but you didn't call this? You called this, but you're not going to call that? You said you're going to let them play, but are you going to let them play? You're not letting them play. You're calling everything now. Oh, no, you didn't call that now. You're going to call this? So, like, for as long as I can remember, the NHL has had a serious reffing issue.
Consistency.
And a big part of that stems from watching the playoffs. You see some prison inmate shit happen. You see some legitimately insane shit. Like Boston, they're unhinged. They're let loose. It's the inmates running the asylum. The refs are like, I'm going to let them play. But then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, that call, even though they didn't call it earlier in the game, that call, go fuck yourself. You're in the box now. You're in the box.
Is that what it's like in Twitter prison?
You just had to go there, eh? You just had.
You set me up perfectly for that one. I was gonna ask because you said you see some prison inmate type of shit in there, and I was like, well, Mark's not in prison, so he wouldn't know what prison inmate shit is. And I was like, oh wait, he is in a form of prison, just like not fucking Kingston Penitentiary type prison.
Wow.
I'm sorry, Mark.
You really had to cut that open wound.
Hopefully someday, fucking what's the Twitter CEO's name? Jack something.
Jack Idiot.
Mark, do you want to stay in Twitter prison?
I'm
Jack
in
Dorsey.
purgatory.
Jack Dorsey.
Jack Dorsey.
Jack Dorsey is the CEO of Twitter. So yes, hopefully someday Jack will realize that you didn't mean anything by that comments about how you were going to kill someone for posting a fake trade rumor.
Look.
Anyway,
so here's the thing though. Like if I'm Colin Campbell, I'm not sure. Firing Tim Peel is probably the right thing to do. But if I'm Colin Campbell, I'm going to keep Tim Peel as my mole. Otherwise, this just like kind of nothing happens.
Here's the thing. You pretty much nailed everything that I was going to say in terms of my take with yours. I think we're on the exact same page. I think that what happened during that game and what Tim Peel said, I think the NHL should launch an investigation into it.
They have to.
There is like Tim Peel, from what it looks like. Tim Peel, first of all, is one of the better refs in the NHL too. Like he's made some questionable calls, but he's been like he's not like I'm trying to think of a good example. He's not like switching sports here, but he's not like an Angel. He's not like an Angel Hernandez, right?
Oh,
where he's just noted fucking terrible official. I had a bit of a stroke saying that there. Anyways. Tim Peel is one of the more respected refs in the NHL. So I truly believe that he just fell on the sword because he's the one that had he's the one that had the hot mic.
Yeah. And
it's unfortunate for him because he was already set to officiate his last game on, I think, April 24th. And we're only a month. It's literally, as of this recording, it's March 24th. So literally a month away. And yet he's getting, and the thing is he's not getting fired like full on fired. He's still getting his pension paid off and everything. So he's still getting paid. But I truly think that was just the NHL's way of making him a puppet and making an example out of him for refs that pull that shit mid game. Because truth be told, if you fuck up a call, human error is part of the game. And while human error is part of the game, you shouldn't make up for that by punishing the other team for it. Like,
yeah.
And you know what? I think at the very least, this will stop that bullshit that we see during games where, I don't know, I can't remember who it was, but you see a guy get boarded from behind, and the guy that boarded him doesn't even get a penalty. And then meanwhile, 5 minutes later, there you go. 5 minutes later, you see a guy like Alex Kerfoot go in and stick check someone, and he gets called for a slashing penalty. Like the NHL's got a massive issue in terms of consistency. And while it's, I kind of feel for Tim Peel because while sure he's part of it and he did pretty much admit to it, he shouldn't have been speaking like that mid game, knowing his mic could be hot. Right. But in the end, it's not like he's the only official in the NHL that's been doing this. I think everybody's been doing this. I think there's something in the training program that may or may not kind of direct them to be that way. Say, hey, if you fuck up a call, call another bad one just so that you can make both parties happy. And I don't think that's something that should happen from here on out. Refs fuck up. They're human just like the rest of us. And while it sucks, I think the NHL's got to open an investigation into how these refs are being trained coming into the NHL, because I've noticed, especially in the past 3-4 years or so, the consistency issue is unmatched. Like,
like goaltender interference, it's a mess. No one knows what it is. Offsides, no one knows what that is either, right? And then coaches challenges, no one knows what that is. I think the biggest issue is like the hooking and the slashing as well. Like,
well, fuck, man. Do you remember the game between the Leafs and the Habs a couple weeks ago too, where Jesperi Kotkaniemi scored and he was in Freddie's crease, and the refs originally called it a good goal. Yeah. They went and looked at it for goalie interference, they went and looked at it after the goal, and they said, nope, that's a good goal, and they called it. And then Sheldon Keefe challenged it for goaltender interference, They looked at it because he was in the crease. So they wanted to make sure that he wasn't in the crease.
Yeah.
And they found out that he was, but they called it a good goal anyways. And then the refs turned it right back on the Habs. And when Sheldon Keefe challenged it for goaltender interference, the ref that made the announcement literally said, after looking at it again, there was goaltender interference, no goal. And
like,
I've said before,
what?
while that was the right call, I would be so pissed off if I was a Habs fan and I had to watch the NHL watch the play over, call it a goal, and then watch it over again and take it back. Like,
what really annoys me is like those Habs fans were saying, wow, Toronto, there's bias. And it's like, dude, Toronto's been shit since 67.
If
there's no conspiring here.
No, if you're a fan of any other hockey team and you think that the Leafs get the benefit of the doubt from the officials, it just straight up doesn't happen. You have never watched a Leaf game in your life if you firmly believe that. Anyways, that's besides the point, though. I think the NHL has definitely got to conduct an investigation.
They have to
on this, and they have to stop if there's something in the training protocol or whatever. When refs are kind of being groomed in and being brought into the NHL, they got to stop with the whole make the calls even so that both parties are happy kind of thing. Yeah. If you fuck up, you fuck up. It's part of the game, and you shouldn't be making bad calls like that, but at the same time, you shouldn't be calling a fucking a weak stick check as a slashing call to make up for a missed behind the fucking checking from behind penalty, right? Yep.
Well, and so let's also get one thing clear though, because there are broadcasting standards, right? The CBSC, and then the what's the other one? Not CanCon. That's for radio. It's the Canadian Broadcast Standards Council, right? I think that's what that is.
It is.
Yeah.
Wow, Mark, I can tell you paid attention in second-year radio. Holy fuck.
Yeah, for 2 minutes.
Just to absorb that information.
Here's the thing, though. If it were just the F-bomb, nothing about, like, calling a penalty, nothing about that, just the F-bomb, that alone is like, well, he's human. He screwed up. And he should be disciplined accordingly because it's an F-bomb. But it was more than that. It was he made the entire thing about, I have to fix the game now. I've got to call a penalty. And it's like, oh, Tim.
Yeah.
Oh, Tim.
You know,
oh, dear. Because this guy totally, like, if there is some sort of max fixing ring, because there was one in the NBA. I'm not sure if there was one in the NFL, but I want to say there's been some shady shit in the MLB as well. So it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if there's some max fixing crap in the NHL.
Yeah.
So with that quote with the hot mic, Tim Peel just totally opened up the can of worms.
He did.
The NHL needs to either address it accordingly, or like they always do, they never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity.
Yeah. Exactly. I think that's one of the best quotes you've ever had. They never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Yeah. And then you know what? Truth be told, going back to that thing you said about him dropping the F-bomb on live TV, I don't even think that's something I would punish him for, man. We've heard players get picked up swearing on the fucking in games and shit. Like it's expected at this point. It's
Drew
entirely
Doughty, shit, man.
Oh yeah. It's entirely due to the fact that he fucked up and he basically admitted that he called a weak penalty on Nashville just to even things out. Like,
yep.
All right. Switching gears here to one final topic. It's been a
bit of a somber note.
It is. It's been a while since we've done a pod here, so it happened about a week ago, but I think it's really worth mentioning. Our heartfelt and absolute condolences to the family of Timur Faizutdinov. If you don't know, he was the Russian junior defenseman playing for HC Dynamo St. Petersburg of the MHL. He was the team captain, and I think they were, if I'm not mistaken, I think they were just in the playoffs. They either down the stretch to the playoffs, or they had just made the playoffs. And if you look up the video, it looked like a super harmless play. The opposing forward for whoever they were playing at the time looked to just flip the puck into the opposing zone. It caught Faizutdinov in the head, and he just tragically succumbed to his injuries a couple days later. So this story broke my heart, man, because it would have been a tough and somber topic had his career ended, but we're talking about him losing his life entirely. And for a play that it's not like it was a massive clap bomb from the point, or it wasn't a bad check from behind or anything like that. It looked like a routine play and it killed him. And that just breaks my heart.
Man, and especially the thing, like when you're playing hockey, you're not expecting that to be your last game.
No.
You're not suiting up to play
yeah.
hockey with your friends, with your comrades, with your teammates, right? You're suiting up to play hockey, to play for a future, right? Like you're not expecting that to be your last shift. You're not expecting that to be your last game. And yeah,
you're not expecting it to be your last day on earth. More importantly, like it's heartbreaking, man, because all of a sudden, like I can't imagine being his parents in this situation. Your son's playing junior hockey, probably living his dream in Russia. And he goes and he's going out doing the thing he loves most. And then something as simple as a puck being flipped into the zone and catching him up high in the head is enough to end his life completely. Like it really hurts to read about something like that. And it's just terrible news. You don't want to hear about anything like that ever, especially, like I said, if you watch the video of what happened, the fact that he lost his life over a play like that is just absurd to me. I can't believe something like that could have resulted in a death. Like,
you never know, man, because when especially you look at the clip of like Clint Matlerchuk or Richard Zednik.
Yeah.
Shit, man. Like you would expect those guys to.
Your life flashes before your eyes. Hell, you look back to the Red Wings in 2002. Yuri Fisher had an episode on the bench. Rich Peverly had an episode on the bench when he was with the Stars. Like
Greg Campbell, I think, as well, right?
Yeah. It's just. Yeah. It's a terrible, terrible situation. And there's really not much else to say on the topic. It's tragic. It was a life gone far, far too soon.
Yeah.
And I figured he was worth mentioning. Our absolute condolences to their family, his friends. And you never want to see shit like this happen ever.
No, it's sad. That's tough. It's really tough.
So
I guess that pretty much concludes the show.
We've got a shout out to do, Mark.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
And he's somebody that you know more than I do, but we both know him. He made a point to mention that he listened to the very end of the Walter Gretzky episode.
Oh yeah, yeah.
This week's shout out on the Shanaclan podcast, one of our 7 listeners goes to Mr. Caleb Bradley. Caleb, thank you for listening, good sir. And
he's actually coming out with a podcast with Al Vanderlaan and Bubba Vandermeulen. This is bad. I forget what the name of the podcast is.
3 Over Par.
I'm
pretty sure it's 3 Over Par. I looked at it earlier today. Pull it up just in case, just so we don't misinform our 7 listeners.
Brandon, sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, 3 Over Par.
3 Over Par.
Then it's going to be streamed on all platforms. So
starting
all major platforms.
Next Wednesday, I believe it says, right? Or next week?
Yeah.
Okay, so for our 7 listeners, if any of you guys are into golf, keep your eyes peeled for next Wednesday. The 3 and Over Par podcast will be officially launching, featuring Caleb Bradley, who is the recipient of this shout out, as well as friends of the show, Al Vanderlaan, Mark's cousin, and Bubba Vandermeulen. So if you're into golf, those guys have golf knowledge coming out the ass, and it's definitely going to be worth a listen.
Really do.
I'm going to tune in myself because I don't know shit about golf. I just look at it as kind of an excuse to drink and day drink and play a sport at the same time. How many other sports can you do that in, right?
Nothing, actually.
So, but having said that, I would like to learn more about the technical aspect of the game, so I'm not just completely embarrassing myself every time I'm on the course. So, those guys. They've all got good heads on their shoulders. Check it out, the 3 Over Par podcast.
Yeah,
bunch of good streaming platforms effective next week.
Yeah.
All right.
So that concludes the show. Thanks to everyone who's been tuning in, and we really appreciate you guys. And
we truly do.
I also want to address one final thing. Since we're both students, the schedule for these podcasts, for these episodes, are so sporadic. I wanted to just kind of apologize for that, because like Hobson and I love doing this stuff, but we're also really busy with like school and work for my internship. So it's difficult to try and juggle this stuff. So
it is, but hopefully shit picks up once we're both out of school this year, and we've got nothing but the summer ahead of us. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. Hobbs and Lugsy bringing you the Shanaclan Podcast once again. Don't forget to check us out Twitter, and YouTube. Twitter and YouTube. I was gonna say I thought Twitter was the only social media, but yeah, check us out on Twitter and YouTube. Thank you for listening once again. It's Hobbs and Lugsy. Take it easy.
Leafs,
NHL,
rumors,
prospects,
banter,
and everything in between.
This is the Shanaclan Podcast
with Hobbs and Lugsy.